There's a land far, far across the sea where the sun shines in the daytime and the moon shines at night. It's a pleasant land with old houses and big castles and narrow roads that lead you over the high hills and through dark forests. Some say fairies live in the forests and giants live in some of the castles, but the people in the little villages don't like to ask too many questions. They'd rather not meet up with a giant, and they wouldn't know how to behave if they met an elf or fairy face to face. Would you? Still, I have heard about an old couple who did get to see some elves, and as it turned out, they were very happy about it, too. Once upon a time, in the little town of Dunkelstadt, there was a shoemaker who worked very hard and was very honest. Still, no matter how hard he worked, he couldn't earn enough to live on, and things kept getting worse and worse. Finally, he and his wife didn't have anything left between them except just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. That evening, he cut out his leather and put the pieces on his workbench, meaning to get up early the next morning and sew the pieces together. Then he said his prayers and went happily to bed. Next morning he got up, whistled a cheerful tune, and sat down at his workbench again, thinking that he'd now go to work stitching the leather pieces together to make the pair of shoes. But can you imagine his surprise when he found that the shoes were already standing there, completely finished? Mr. Shoemaker could hardly believe his eyes. He looked at the shoes and turned them over in his hands, but there wasn't one false stitch in the whole job. It was the finest pair of shoes he'd ever seen. That same morning, a customer came to his workshop. He liked the shoes so well that he willingly paid a high price for them. That made poor Mr. Shoemaker very happy, because with the money he bought enough leather to make 2 more pair of shoes. That evening he cut out the leather and went to bed early so that he could get up at dawn and stitch the pieces together. But he was saved all that trouble, because in the morning the work was already done. Now there were 2 fine pair of shoes waiting for him on the workbench, and the stitching was just as fine as the day before. 2 customers came in shortly afterwards, and they paid him very well for such beautiful shoes, so that the shoemaker bought enough leather to make 4 pair more. Once more he cut out the work in the evening, and found it was done in the morning. And so it went on for quite a while. Whatever was ready at night was always finished at daybreak. The shoemaker's shop became known as the best in town, and his business was booming. One evening around Christmas time, as he and his wife were sitting in front of the fire chatting together, he said to her, "I'd like to stay up and watch tonight and see who it is that comes and does my work for me." The wife agreed, so they left a light burning over the workbench and hid themselves behind the curtains in one corner of the room. As soon as it was midnight, 2 little dwarfs came into the room and began to dance up and down on the shoemaker's bench. One of these elves was dressed in a raggedy shirt and a torn pair of trousers. He had bushy gray hair and spoke in a whisper. "Did I tell you the news?" he said to the other elf. "A man came to town with a hat made of roast beef, a coat made of cream cheese, and buttons made of doughnuts. They say his name's Willie Wood." And then the funny dwarf began to sing.
There came a man to our town, to our town, to our town. There came a man to our town, and his name was Willie Wood. And he played upon a banjo, banjo, a banjo. And he played upon a banjo, and his name was Willie Wood. His hat was made of the good roast beef, the good roast beef, the good roast beef. His hat was made of the good roast beef, and his name was Willie Wood. And he played upon a banjo, banjo, banjo. And he played upon a banjo, and his name was Willie Wood. His coat was made of the cream cheese, the cream cheese, the cream cheese. His coat was made of the cream cheese, and his name was Willie Wood. And he played upon a banjo, banjo, banjo. And he played upon a banjo, and his name was Willie Wood. His buttons was made of the doughnuts, the doughnuts, the doughnuts. His buttons were made of the doughnuts, and his name was Willie Wood. And he played upon a banjo, banjo, banjo. And he played upon a banjo, and his name was Willie Wood.
When the first little dwarf had stopped singing and dancing, the second one jumped up on a shelf and started to laugh. He wore a tattered old coat with holes all over it and had a bushy head of red hair. "I've heard some other news," he said in a cracked voice. "Another man's come to our town, and he ate up all the roast beef, all the cream cheese, and all the doughnuts, and they say his name is Aiken Drum." And then the red-haired dwarf began to sing.
Well, another man came to our town, to our town, to our town. Another man came to our town, and his name was Aiken Drum. And he played upon the guitar, the guitar, the guitar. He played upon the guitar, and his name was Aiken Drum. Well, he ate up all the good roast beef, the good roast beef, the good roast beef. He ate up all the good roast beef, and his name was Aiken Drum. And he played upon the guitar, the guitar, the guitar. He played upon the guitar, and his name was Aiken Drum. Well, he ate up all the cream cheese, the cream cheese, the cream cheese. He ate up all the cream cheese, and his name was Aiken Drum. And he played upon the guitar, the guitar, the guitar. He played upon the guitar, and his name was Aiken Drum. And he ate up all the doughnuts, the doughnuts, the doughnuts. He ate up all the doughnuts, and his name was Aiken Drum. And he played upon the guitar, the guitar, the guitar. He played upon the guitar, and his name was Aiken Drum.
After a while, the two dwarfs settled down to work. The shoemaker and his wife could hardly take their eyes off them. They sat on the bench, took up all the leather pieces, and began working with their little fingers, stitching and wrapping and tapping so fast that in 10 minutes everything was finished. Then, quick as a wink, they put the tools back in order and danced out of the window. Next day, the wife said to the shoemaker, "These little elves have made us rich, and we ought to be thankful to them and do them a good turn if we can. I was very sorry to see how badly they're dressed. The wind must go whistling right through those rags of theirs. I'll tell you what, I'll make each of them a shirt and a good suit and a warm overcoat, and you can make each of them a little pair of shoes." Mr. Shoemaker thought that was a fine idea, so they went to work, and one evening when everything was ready, they put the little clothes on the workbench instead of the leather they used to cut out. Then they hid behind the curtain again to see what the elves would do. Around midnight they came again, hopping and skipping. The gray-haired one took the red-haired one by the arm and danced up and down with excitement. "I must tell you what happened to me this evening," he said. "Instead of coming straight here, I took the long road that goes through Nottingham town. I got lost and tried to ask my way, but not a soul would look up and not a soul would look down to show me the way to Nottingham town." And then, just as before, the little gray-haired dwarf started to sing in a mysterious sort of voice.
"In Nottingham town, not a soul would look up, not a soul would look up, not a soul would look down. Not a soul would look up, not a soul would look down to show me the way to fair Nottingham town. I rode a gray horse that was called a gray mare, with a gray mane and tail, green stripe down her back. Gray mane and gray tail, green stripe down her back. There warn't a hair on her be what was coal black. She stood so still, she threw me to the dirt. She tore my hide and bruised my shirt. From saddle to stirrup I mounted again, and on my 10 toes I rode over the plain. Met the king and the queen and a company more, a riding behind and a marching before. Come a strong-minded drummer, a beating a drum, with his hands in his bosom, come marching along. In Nottingham town, not a soul would look up, not a soul would look up, not a soul would look down. Not a soul would look up, not a soul would look down, to show me the way to fair Nottingham town.
When the first dwarf had stopped singing, the red-haired fellow started to jump up on a shelf. But suddenly he saw the little clothes that the shoemaker's wife had made for them. Then they both laughed and chuckled and made all sorts of funny and happy noises. They took off their old raggedy shirts and put on the new clothes in a twinkling of an eye. They danced and they hopped and they skipped over the bench and over the chairs and on all the shelves and tables. Finally, they danced out of the window and away over the road towards Nottingham town. The shoemaker and his wife never saw the dwarfs again, but everything went very well with their shop from that time on, and they lived happily ever after. Now over the hills, but not very far away from the shoemaker's town of Dunkelstadt, in a kingdom called Gulbering, there lived a farmer and his wife whose house stood right on the edge of a great forest. They had a little baby boy who always smiled, and his name was Johnny. One day Johnny's mother took him along when she went picking blueberries in the forest. She left the baby lying there on the moss as she went to look for blueberries, and while her back was turned, the fairies came to look at the child. "Oh, he's so pretty, let's take him home with us," said the youngest to the oldest fairy, and they scooped Johnny up and took him back to the palace where they lived. When his mother came back from the blueberry patch, she hunted all over for her baby. She followed the track of an otter that led through the woods, and then she followed the path of a mountain deer. But at last she realized that the fairies had stolen her child. There wasn't anything she could do but go home and tell her husband that the baby was lost.
I left my baby lying there, lying there, lying there. I left my baby lying there to go and gather blueberries. I followed the wee brown otter's track, otter's track, otter's track. I followed the wee brown otter's track, but I didn't find my baby, oh. I followed the path of the mountain deer, mountain deer, mountain deer. I followed the path of the mountain deer, but I did not find my baby. I could not find my baby, oh, baby, oh, baby, oh. I could not find my baby, oh, for he had gone to fairyland.
But meanwhile the fairies took very good care of baby Johnny, and they saw to it that no harm came his way. They didn't teach him much book learning, but he knew how to swim and box, how to hunt and fish, and how to sail a boat. One day, after many years had passed, he told them that he was going out into the big wide world. "I want to find myself a wife," he said. The fairies gave him their blessing, and Johnny, now grown tall and strong, set off through the forest to visit the king's castle. Now the king of Gulbering at that time was a very evil king, but he had a good and lovely daughter named Ermelyn. Whenever a young suitor came to ask for Ermelyn's hand in marriage, the wicked king sent him away to do some terribly dangerous job, and those young men never came back. But Johnny was a brave lad, and he walked right into the king's castle and asked to marry Ermelyn. The king took one look at him and said, No man shall have my daughter who doesn't go down into the wonderful cave and bring me 3 golden hairs from the beard of the giant king who reigns there. If you do that, you'll have my permission to be my daughter's husband." "That's all right with me," said brave Johnny. "But first I'll have to build myself a boat so that I can cross the ocean to the land of the golden giant's cave." Ermelyn watched him from the castle window while he cut the timber and sawed the boards that went into his ship. She liked Johnny very much, and she was very happy that he'd asked to become her husband. "There's nobody like my Johnny," she said to herself in the strange language of Gullbring. "He's so lithe, so brave, and so bonny. I hope that the keel of his ship will take him safely across the foreign seas."
Oh, oh, it's like my Johnny, sae light, sae blithe, sae bonny. His form was mang the mony, kill lads a collie tine. He'll set or row sae tightly, or in the dance sae sprightly. He'll cut and shuffle sidely, 'tis true, or he na mine. Weel may the keel row, the keel row, the keel row. Weel may the keel row that my lad's in. He has nae mair a learning and tells his weekly earning, yet right frae wrang discerning, though brave nae bruiser he. Though he no earth the plack is, his ain coat on his back is, and nane can say that black is the white o' Johnny's he. Weel may the keel row, the keel row, the keel row. Weel may the keel row that my lad's in. He wears a blue bonnet, blue bonnet, blue bonnet. He wears a blue bonnet, a dimples in his chin. And weel may the keel row, the keel row, the keel row. And weel may the keel row that my lad's in. Weel may the keel row, the keel row, the keel row. Weel may the keel row that my lad's in.
On the day Johnny was finished with his ship, he set sail for the faraway lands of the Golden Giant. But before he said goodbye to the kingdom of Gullbring, he told Ermelyn that he'd be back to make her his bride. "All my fondest thoughts stay with you," Johnny told her. "No matter how far I travel, I'll always be thinking of you."
And all the thoughts that I shall have will stay with you. And though I wander far and wide, they stay with you. And you will surely not forget me. No matter how the distance grows, there's nothing that can part our thoughts. The clouds that pass high overhead will bring to you the message of my constant heart that stays with you. And you will surely not forget me. The way is long, but I will know there's nothing that can part our thoughts.
Johnny sailed for a year and a day until he reached the land of Galaden, where the Golden Giant lived in a wonderful cave under a high mountain. Johnny landed at a port city and started to walk the rest of the way on foot. An officer stopped him as he walked through the street and asked him what trade he followed and what he knew. "I know just about everything," Johnny said. "If that's the case, you're just the man we're looking for. Please tell us why the well in our marketplace is dry and won't give us any water. If you'll tell us the reason for that, we'll give you 2 mules loaded with gold." "I'll be glad to tell you that just as soon as I get back," Johnny said. Then he traveled on and came to another town, and there a guard also asked him what trade he followed and what he knew. "I know just about everything," said Johnny. "Then please do us a favor," they said. "We have a favorite tree that always bears golden apples, or at least it did until this year when it didn't even have any leaves on it. Be so good and tell us what's wrong with our tree." "I'll gladly tell you," said Johnny, "just as soon as I come back." At last he came to a huge river, and he took a ferry boat over to the other side. The ferryman asked him what he did and what he knew. Johnny said, "Just about everything." "In that case," said the ferryman, "please tell me why I have to sit in this boat forever and can never get my freedom. For 40 long years and more I've been forced to run this ferry boat, but all I want to do is go home."
For 40 long years and more, I've been rowing from shore to shore. Perhaps I'm bound to this boat the rest of my life. I do not know why, but I sail here and sigh. I feel so unhappy, I wanna go home. So hoist up the ferry sail, pray for the wind to blow. Make this my very last trip, I wanna go home. I wanna go home. I wanna go home. I feel so unhappy that I wanna go home. When I was a very young man, I worked with the plow on the land. I left my home around this world to roam, but now that I'm here, I very much fear that I'll never be free or find the way to my home. So hoist up the ferry sail, pray for the wind to blow. Make this my very last trip, I wanna go home. I wanna go home. I wanna go home. Yes, I feel so unhappy that I wanna go home.
When Johnny heard the poor ferryman's tale, he told him not to worry. "I'll tell you how you can get free just as soon as I come back." On the other side of the river, Johnny came to the Golden Giant's wonderful cave. The giant wasn't at home when Johnny arrived, but his grandmother sat at the door in her rocking chair. "What do you want?" she asked. "3 golden hairs from the giant's beard," said Johnny. "That's very risky," said the grandmother, "but I'll see what I can do for you." Quick as a wink, she changed Johnny into a tiny ant and hid him in the folds of her cloak. "Thank you," he said, "but I also have to know the answers to 3 questions. Why did the city's well go dry? Why is the golden apple tree now leafless? And why is the ferryman stuck to his boat?" "You seem to be fond of asking questions," said the old grandmother. "But be still now and listen to what the giant says when I pull the hairs out of his beard. Perhaps he'll tell you what you want to know." Soon it was evening, and the giant came home. When he entered the wonderful cave, he sniffed all around. "I smell something strange," he said to his grandmother, and started searching all through the cave. "Now, don't you go messing up the place," the old lady told him. "I've just got everything straightened out." So the giant stopped looking, put his head in her lap, and went to sleep. As soon as he started to snore, the old lady took one of the hairs of his golden beard and pulled it out. "Ouch!" said the giant, waking up. "What's happening?" "I had a dream that startled me," said the grandmother, "and in my trouble I took hold of your beard. I dreamed that the well in the city's run dry and won't give water. What can the matter be?" "Oh," said the giant, "if they could find that out, they'd be happy. Under a stone in the well is a toad. If they could get rid of him, it would flow again." Then he fell asleep once more, and the old lady pulled a second hair from his golden beard. "Ouch!" cried the giant. "What's the matter?" "I was dozing again," said his grandmother. "I dreamed that the golden apple tree has stopped bearing apples, and now doesn't even have a leaf on it. What's the meaning of that?"
"Aha," said the giant. "They'd give a lot to know that. A mouse is chewing at the root of the tree. If they get rid of him, the tree will soon have golden apples again."
Then he fell asleep, and as soon as he began to snore, his grandmother pulled out the third golden hair.
"Ouch!" he said. "What's the trouble now?"
"I had a very strange dream this time," she said. "I thought I saw a ferryman, and he had to keep going back and forth across a mighty river and could never find out how to set himself free."
"Oh, that's a silly ferryman," said the golden giant. "If he were to give the steering wheel into the hand of any passenger who came along, he'd find himself free and the other would be forced to take his place."
And then he went back to sleep. In the morning, the giant left his cave to go to work on the mountain. The grandmother changed Johnny from an ant back into a young man again. Then she gave him the 3 hairs, reminded him of the 3 answers, and sent him on his way. Then Johnny came to the ferryman, who said, "What's the answer to my question?"
"Ferry me over first," said Johnny. "I'll tell you on the other side."
As soon as they had landed, Johnny told him to give the steering wheel to the first passenger who came along, and then he could run away as soon as he pleased. After walking a bit, Johnny reached the town that had the golden apple tree. He told the people what to do about their tree. "Get rid of the mouse that's chewing at the root, and you'll soon have golden apples again." They thanked him for the advice and gave him a sack of golden apples for it, and so he traveled on to the city where the well had dried up. Here he told the guards that they could have water if they'd just get rid of the toad in the well. They thanked Johnny for his advice and gave him 2 mules laden with gold. Johnny stored all the gold on his ship and went sailing back to the kingdom of Gulbering. Ermelyn was very happy to see him again and to hear how well everything had gone. Then Johnny gave the 3 golden hairs to the king, and the wedding took place the very next day. But the king was envious when he saw all the gold that Johnny had brought on his ship.
"My dear boy," he said, "where did you find all this treasure?"
"By the side of a river," Johnny answered, "and there's plenty more to be had." "Tell me where it is," said the wicked king, "and I'll get some too."
"Very well," Johnny said. "You'll have to travel on and on, over sea and land, till you come to the shore of a great river. There you'll see a ferryman. Let him carry you across, and when you get to the other side, you'll find heaps and heaps of gold."
Away went the greedy king, and when he came to the river, he hailed the ferryman, who gladly took him into his boat. But as soon as the king had stepped into the boat, the ferryman put the steering wheel into his hand and sprang ashore. And now the wicked king was stuck to the ferry, and all he could do was travel back and forth across the river as punishment for all his evil ways. And do you suppose he's still working on the ferry to this day? I'm pretty sure he is, because no one will bother to take the steering wheel out of his hands. But Johnny and Ermelyn, they lived happily ever after.
There's a big ship sailing down the Illy-Alley-O, the Illy-Alley-O, the Illy-Alley-O. There's a big ship sailing down the Illy-Alley-O, the Illy-Alley-O. Aboard that ship there are wee ferryman, wee ferryman, wee ferryman. Aboard that ship there are wee ferryman, wee ferryman. There are oranges and peaches and oysters in the can, oysters in the can, oysters in the can. There are oranges and peaches and oysters in the can, oysters in the can. There are lizards and lobsters and ticky-tacky-toos, ticky-tacky-toos, ticky-tacky-toos. There are lizards and lobsters and ticky-tacky-toos, ticky-tacky-toos. There's a big ship a-sailing down the Illy-Alley-O, the Illy-Alley-O, the Illy-Alley-O. There's a big ship sailing down the Illy-Alley-O, the Illy-Alley-O.
Once upon a time, in the land across the sea where the sun shines by day and the moon shines by night, there lived a poor but honest knight named Sir Brunts of Tobleyville. In his youth, Sir Brunts had worn shiny armor and gone riding off on a white horse to serve his king in the wars against the giants from the north. But as the years went by, the king no longer needed so many knights because the giants declared peace. Sir Brunts went back home to run his farm and raise his children. He had 3 sons named Eglamour, Egmont, and Egbert. Now the 3 sons ate a lot and didn't do much work, so before long Sir Brunts ran out of money and hard times settled down to stay. His shiny armor grew rusty in the barn, his white horse got so thin it could barely pull the plow, and the king no longer sent for Sir Brunts when he gave his yearly party for the old veteran knights. Things were in a very bad way. Then Sir Brunts sent for his 3 sons and gave the oldest a rooster, the second a big scythe for cutting grass, and the third a cat. "I'm now old," he said. "My end is near. I would like to give you a good start in the world. I have no money, and what I am giving you doesn't seem to be worth very much, but I do think you can make your fortune with these little gifts. If you can find a land where what you have is still unknown, these things can bring you great riches. Take this rooster, scythe, and cat, and see what you can do." The first one to start out was the oldest, Sir Eglamour, who sat his rooster on his shoulder and went hiking over the hills and far away. But wherever he went, in every town he came to, he saw a rooster sitting on the church steeple turning round with the wind. And in the villages he heard plenty of roosters crowing, so his bird was nothing new. In fact, everybody and his uncle owned a rooster already, so there didn't seem to be much chance of his making a fortune. Still, after a while, he came to an island where the local people had never heard of a rooster and didn't even know how to tell the time. They knew, of course, when it was morning or evening, but at night after sundown they had no way of knowing what the time was. Sir Eglamour took the rooster from his shoulder and held it out in his hand. "Take a look at this," he said. "What a noble animal he is! He looks like a knight, for he carries a bright red crest on his head and spurs on his heels, and what's more, he crows 3 times every night at certain hours. And when he crows the 3rd time, the sun's about to come up." "That's not all," Sir Eglamour added. "Sometimes he crows in broad daylight, and then you've got to take warning because the weather's surely about to change." The local people were very happy when they heard this. They stayed awake 1 whole night, and to their great joy they heard how gloriously the rooster called the hour at 2, 4, and 6 o'clock. Then they asked Sir Eglamour whether the bird was up for sale and how much he'd sell it for. "I am a knight," said Sir Eglamour proudly. "I will not sell this noble bird for cash, but I'll trade him for a horse, a sword, and some armor, along with some food to last me a week or 2. "That's a very fair trade," the people all said, and they gave Sir Eglamour the best horse on the island, brought him the finest sword and the sturdiest coat of mail they could buy, and gave him lunch and rations to last for 3 weeks. "If you don't mind, Sir Eglamour," they said to him, "our island is menaced by a terribly fierce dragon. We would be very grateful if you could get rid of him for us." Sir Eglamour said, "Certainly," and asked someone to show him the way to the dragon. Then he rode forth proudly to do battle with the monster. When he came to the cave, Sir Eglamour challenged the dragon, who had a skin so tough that nothing could go through it. The dragon thought he was safe, so he yawned in the brave knight's face, but at that moment Sir Eglamour dispatched the monster with a single thrust of his sword. He rode back to town in victory, and all the people began to sing his praises. They even sent word of his brave deed to the king in London town.
Sir Eglamour, that valiant knight, fall lang down day, he took up his sword and went for to fight. Fall lang down day, and as he rode o'er hill and dale, all armed with a coat of mail, fa la la la, fa la lang down day. There starts a huge dragon out of his den, fa la lang down day, which it killed I know not how many men, fa la lang down day. But when he sees Sir Eglamour, if you'd but heard how that dragon did roar, fa la la la, fa la lang down day. This dragon had a plaguey hard hide, a fall lang down day, which could the strongest steel abide, fall lang down day. But as the dragon yawning did fall, he thrust his sword down hilt and all, fall la la la, fall lang down day. The dragon laid him down and roared, fall lang down day. The knight was sorry for his sword, fall lang down day. The sword it was a right good blade, as ever Turk or Spaniard made, fall la la la, fall lang down day. Well, now let us pray for the king and the queen, fall lang down day, and eke in London that may be seen, fall lang down day, as many knights and as many more, as all as good as Eglamour, fall la la la, fall lang down day.
Sir Eglamour became so famous for getting rid of the dragon that the people of his island elected him governor. The prettiest girl in the capital became his bride, and they lived happily and wealthily ever after. As for the rooster, he crowed on time every morning and always let the people know when the weather was about to change. In the meanwhile, his brother Sir Egmont decided to try his luck with the scythe. Sir Egmont already had a sweetheart, a lovely lady named Greensleeves. She lived in a castle not far from his father's farm, and so Sir Egmont put the scythe on his shoulder and paid her a visit. "I'm off to seek my fortune," he said to the Lady Greensleeves. "Will you marry me now and come along with me?" "That will never do," said the Lady Greensleeves' father. "You may be a knight, but if you want to marry my daughter, you must first have a castle of your own." "Yes, Sir Egmont," said the lady, "my father is right. I don't think I can marry you after all." The poor knight was very unhappy. "You do me wrong to cast me off so discourteously," he told her. "I've always delighted in your company. Farewell for now, but remember that I'll always be true to you."
Alas, my love, you do me wrong to cast me off discourteously, and I have loved you so long, delighting in your company. Greensleeves was all my joy, Greensleeves was my delight. Greensleeves was my heart of gold, and who but my Lady Greensleeves? The Greensleeves, farewell, adieu. To God I pray to prosper thee, for I am still thy lover true. Come once again and love me. Green sleeves was all my joy, green sleeves was my delight. Green sleeves was my heart of gold, and who but my lady green sleeves?
When Sir Egmont had said goodbye to the Lady Greensleeves, he traveled over the hills and far away with a scythe on his shoulder. Still, there didn't seem much chance of his making a fortune. Wherever he went, he saw farmers who had just as good a scythe as the one he carried. But at last, as good luck would have it, he came to an island where the people had never heard of a scythe. On that far-away island, when the wheat was ready for the harvest or the hay was ready to be mowed, they went into the fields and pulled it up with their hands. But it was hard work that way, and took so long that much of the harvest was lost. Sir Egmont took his father's scythe and went to work. He mowed down a whole field of wheat so quickly that the local people could only stand and stare. They asked Sir Egmont whether the scythe was for sale and how much he'd sell it for. "I am a knight," said Sir Egmont proudly. "I will not sell this wonderful instrument for cash. But I see that you have an old castle where no one is living right now. I'll trade this fine scythe for that castle on the hill." "That's a very fair trade," the people all said. So Sir Egmont promptly moved into the castle and sent word to the Lady Greensleeves that now he had a fine place of his own. They were married within a month, and shortly afterwards the people elected him governor of the island, so they lived happily and wealthily ever after. Meanwhile, the third son, Sir Egbert, decided to try his luck with the cat. Sir Egbert didn't really want to be a knight like his father and brothers. He had always wanted to be a sea captain. Now he perched the cat on his shoulder and went wandering over the hills and far away. At first it didn't look as though he could make his fortune with that cat. Wherever he went, people already had a cat. In fact, everybody and his brother had cats. But at last, as good luck would have it, he came to an island where the people had never known of a cat, had never seen a cat, and had never heard one say, "Meow." What they did have a lot of was mice. The mice had the island on the run. They danced on the tables and chairs, and they ate up all the cheese. Even the king of the island didn't know what to do about the mice who were scampering all over his palace. Here was a fine field for the cat. She began to chase the mice, and in a couple of hours she'd cleared out the whole palace. The people and their king were so surprised that they could only stand and stare. They asked Sir Egbert whether the cat was for sale and how much he'd sell her for. "I am a sea-going knight," said Sir Egbert proudly. "I will not sell this magnificent animal for cash. But I see that you have a fine ship in your harbor. I'll trade this fine cat for that ship and a cargo of candy to take to London town." "That's a fair trade," the king said, "and I'll give you 50 of my best sailors to act as your crew." So they filled up the ship with fine candies, and also oranges and peaches and oysters in the can, as well as lobsters and ticky-tacky too. Away sailed Sir Egbert with his jolly crew. They all called him Captain Egbert, sir, and he stayed in his cabin tasting the candy while the boatswain's mate sang rousing songs to help the men haul away at the ropes on deck.
When I was a little boy and so me mother told me, "Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe." If I ran away to sea, that she would have to scold me. "Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe." Louis was the king of France before the revolution. "Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe." But Louis ate far too much cake, which spoiled his constitution. "Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe." The cook is in the galley and is making stew so dandy. "Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe." The captain's in his cabin and is eating cakes and candy. Way, Holloway, we'll Holloway Joe.
Once in another part of the land across the sea where the sun shines by day and the moon at night, a wise old donkey decided it was time for him to retire. He lived and worked on a farm with a whole lot of other animals, but the farmer who ran the place wasn't very good to his animals, and the food was pretty skimpy. "I think I know a better way to live," the donkey said to himself. "I'll turn musician and travel to the big city of Bremen." There were some other donkeys in his stable, and also a couple of oxen and a few horses. He told them his plan and asked if they didn't want to come along.
Oh, brothers all, just listen to me, a lily bolero, bullinala. I know a better way to be, a lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, lero, lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, 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 lily bolero, bullinala.
None of the other animals in the barnyard wanted to go along with the wise old donkey, so he took off all by himself. After he'd gone a ways, he saw a dog sitting by the roadside. "Why do you look so unhappy, Brother Rover?" asked the donkey. "I'm getting too old for the hunting," said the dog. "I've got nothing to do for a living, and nobody seems to care." The donkey rubbed his chin for a moment. "Why not come along with me?" he said. "I'm planning to become a town musician, and in that line 2 are better than 1.
Hey, Brother Rover, listen to me, a lily bolero, bullinala. I know a better way to be, a lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, lero, lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, 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 lily bolero, bullinala.
So the donkey and the dog jogged along the road together. A bit further down the road they saw a cat sitting by the roadside. "Why do you look so unhappy, Sister Tabby?" asked the donkey. "I'm getting too old to catch mice," answered the cat. "I've got nothing to do for a living, and nobody seems to care about me." The donkey switched his tail for a moment. "Why not come along with us?" he said. "We're going to Bremen to become town musicians, and in that line 3 are better than 2.
Hey, Sister Tabby, listen to me, a lily bolero, bullinala. I know a better way to be, a lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, lero, lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, 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 lily bolero, bullinala.
When the donkey, the dog, and the cat had gone down the road a piece, they met a rooster sitting on a farmyard gate. He was crowing with all his might. "Bravo," said the donkey. "You do make beautiful music. You must be pretty happy." "If you must know," said the rooster, "I'm tired of my life in this barnyard. I crow just to keep in practice. Actually, there's nothing to crow about." "Then by all means come with us," said the donkey. "We're headed for Bremen to become town musicians, and in that line 4 are better than 3.
Hey, Brother Rooster, listen to me, a lily bolero, bullinala. I know a better way to be, a lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, lero, lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, 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 lily bolero, bullinala.
So all 4 traveled together on the road to Bremen. The donkey could hardly keep from laughing out loud. He was so happy that things were turning out as he'd planned. "You know," he said to Brother Rover, "there's an old saying that was found written on a stone in a swamp. The saying goes that this land shall be ruled by a donkey and a dog. I'm sure you and we're the ones."
There was an old saying found in a bog, a lily bolero, bullinala. The land shall be ruled by donkey and dog, lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, lero, lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, 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 lily bolero, bullinala.
The 4 town musicians walked on in the direction of the big city. But it got to be evening before they could reach Bremen, and when night came, they went into a forest to get some sleep. The donkey and the dog bedded down on some leaves under a high tree. The cat climbed up into one of the branches, and the rooster flew up to the very top. Before going to bed, the rooster always looked all around to see that everything was well. This time he suddenly noticed a light off in the distance. "There must be a house in the middle of the forest," he told his friends. "In that case," said the donkey, "we ought to see if we can't get a bed for the night. After all, sleeping in the woods is not my idea of comfort. Besides," said Brother Rover, "I could do with a bone or two or a piece of meat." So they all walked toward the place where Brother Rooster had spotted the light. As they came closer, the light grew bigger and bigger until at last they came to a house where a gang of robbers lived. The donkey, being the tallest, marched up to the window and peeked in. "Well, Brother Donkey," said the rooster, "what do you see?" "What do I see?" said the donkey. "Why, I see a table spread with all sorts of good things to eat, and robbers sitting around making merry." "That would be a fine place for us to stay," said the dog. "Tell you what," said the cat, "let's give them a concert. We'll sing and play a very fine serenade for them, and maybe they'll invite us to stay the night." So the dog got on the donkey's back, the cat perched on the dog's back, and the rooster stood on the cat's head. Then they began to make music. They sang and they played, and they made a lovely serenade.
We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a banjo, bano, bano, banjo. We have a banjo, bano, bano, jo. And we can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ling. We can dance and we can sing, play, dance, sing. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a guitar, geo, geo, guitar. We have a guitar, geo, guitar. And we can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ling. We can dance and we can sing, play, dance, sing. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a drum, drum. We have a drum, drum. And we can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ling. We can dance and we can sing, play, dance, sing. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a tambourine, tambourine. We have a tambourine, tambourine. And we can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ling. We can dance and we can sing, play, dance, sing. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a cymbal, see-o, see-o, cymbal. We have a cymbal, see-o, cymbal. And we can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ling. We can dance and we can sing, play, dance, sing. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a gong, we have a gong. And we can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ling. We can dance and we can sing, play, dance, sing. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a whistle, 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 whistle. We have a whistle, whistle, whistle. And we can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ling. We can dance and we can sing a play, dance, sing. We We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We are the town musicians and serenade you well. We have a banjo, we have a guitar, we have a drum, we have a tambourine, we have a cymbal, we have a gong, we have a whistle, we whistle. We can dance so well, dance and sing a ring-a-ding. We can dance and we can sing, play, dance, sing.
When they were finished singing and playing, the 4 town musicians jumped through the window all at once and tumbled into the robbers' dining room with a terrible crash of glass. The robbers were terribly frightened. When they heard the serenade, they thought that spirits were haunting the house, and when the window broke, they decided some horrible hobgoblins had crashed their party. They didn't stop to find out. They took to their heels and ran away as fast as they could. When the robbers had fled, the town musicians sat down at the dinner table and helped themselves to all the good food on the plates. They thought everything was simply delicious. Then the donkey stretched himself out on a heap of straw in the yard, the dog curled up on a mat behind the door, the cat rolled up in front of the warm ashes in the fireplace, and Brother Rooster perched on a beam under the roof. Since they were all pretty tired after a hard day's journey, they all went to sleep. Around midnight, when the robbers saw from a distance that the lights were out and everything seemed quiet, they began to think that they had been in too great a hurry to get away. One of them, who was braver than the rest, went back to see what was going on. Everything was still. He marched into the house and into the living room, but accidentally he stepped on the cat's tail. She sprang up to the mantelpiece and then jumped into his face, scratching, spitting, and clawing. That frightened him terribly, so he ran to the back door. But there Brother Rover jumped up and bit him in the leg, and as he was crossing the yard, the donkey gave him a good kick. His cries woke up the rooster, who crowed with all his might. So the robber ran back to his gang as fast as he could and told them how a horrible witch had waited for him in the house. She'd spat at him and scratched his face with her long fingernails. Then a man with a knife hidden behind the door had stabbed him in the leg. Then a black monster stood in the yard and struck him with a club. And finally another goblin had sat on the roof and cried out, "Throw the rascal up here!" After that, the robbers never dared go near the place again. But the 4 musicians were so happy with their house that they stayed there and lived happily ever after. "I hope all the other animals will find out what a good life it is to be a musician," said the donkey. "We certainly know how to live without fuss and bother."
Oh, animals, all just listen to us. Lily bolero, bullinala. We know a way to live without fuss. Lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, lero, lily bolero, bullinala. Lero, 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 lily bolero, bullinala.